Hey everyone, so One Piece chapter 1074 just came out, and Egghead Island just keeps rolling with more surprises and twists. Now we're playing the traitor game yet again. We've seen this play out before. We had this situation in Zou, stretching all the way to Wano, where we found out that Kanjuro was the traitor. This time we're working with a much smaller cast of characters. Now, this is nothing too crazy. Egghead Island has already been surprising us with twists like this. I mean, a couple chapters ago we found out that Stussy was ready to betray the world government on behalf of Vegapunk, so now it's just going back the other way, where it seems like someone on Vegapunk and the Straw Hat side is betraying them, I suppose on behalf of the world government, but that's kind of unclear why whoever is doing this, right? So, there's not a large cast of characters to work with, which I like because this is going to be a shorter term mystery, and the tricky part is that we've only kinda got the Vegapunks as the only options to work with, because we know the Straw Hats aren't betraying anyone. We know that Bonnie doesn't really have the knowledge or capabilities to be doing any of this, disabling the island's defense forces, so it's gotta be one of the Vegapunks as far as we know, unless it's some other character we haven't heard of. Or Stussy pulling a double cross, but I think that would just be, you know, if Oda does it, he does it, but it's just so absurdly random at that point. Why reveal Stussy to be betraying the world government and being on Vegapunk's side, only just to have her swap back a couple chapters later? That's kind of just really random writing. I'm just gonna assume that it's one of the Vegapunks, right? And with that in mind, most people are saying that the traitor, most signs point to Shaka. Okay, so it kind of makes sense, right? This is what people have been saying on my stream. This is what I've been seeing from the general discourse. Shaka just seems to follow as the best pick simply because he's the one that seems to have most control in general out of all of the Vegapunks. He would be well equipped to be disabling systems and things like that. From the beginning, he's been the most cryptic out of the Vegapunks. It's been hard to understand his motivations. His face is hidden behind a mask. From the very beginning, his dialogue has been kind of doomer out of all of the Vegapunks, talking about how his death is soon approaching. There's just the most amount of mystery surrounding Shaka. He's also the most prominent of all the Vegapunks. It would be by far the most interesting if he is the Vegapunk that ultimately, you know, is the one that's ruining things for them behind the scenes, and finding out his motivations for that would be very, very interesting, right? Because after Vegapunk number 1, the main body, right, Shaka is essentially the next in line in charge. He's body number 1. So it would be really, really interesting to see why Vegapunk's first appointed body is essentially trying to cause trouble for him and what the rest of the bodies are trying to do. I would also add that it does seem like among the rest of the Vegapunks, we just don't know enough about them for any of them to be, I suppose, interesting twists to be revealed to be a traitor. It's like, okay, if Edison turns out to be a traitor, what's the big... We barely know this character, right? We have such a soft feel for their personality or anything about them in general. It doesn't feel like a big deal. Pythagoras, same thing. So, I mean, Lilith is the only other Vegapunk that we really feel familiar with. I suppose Atlas to a degree. But with Lilith, it's just she's the evil Vegapunk. So at that point, it doesn't even feel like much of a plot twist. It's like too obvious to even be an interesting moment or development in the series for us to find out that Lilith is the one that's causing trouble. So out of all the Vegapunks, it does seem like Shaka is set up best to be a traitor. I still think that even if it is something that many people can predict, it's not something that I would have personally guessed on at my own. So when we get that moment, I do think it's still ultimately going to be a good twist. And more importantly, we don't know why he's doing it. So even if we could potentially narrow it down and say it's likely Shaka, I think the bigger question is why? What's happening behind the scenes with all these bodies? And I think that I also like the fact that there's a traitor simply because it adds some reason to Oda writing in so many Vegapunks, because it allows a bit of a mystery to come into play. You know, if there's just 1 or 2 extra bodies, then we kind of know exactly who the traitor is. But with this, it does allow Oda to play a little game of, you know, trying to make us guess who, and add a bit of impact when he reveals that, okay, body number 1 is the one, potentially, that's kind of trying to ruin things for everybody else. So why is that happening? What's the deal with all the bodies? What happens when you combine their personalities? What's the truth behind this whole setup of Vegapunks, right? So while I am not happy, I think I've expressed this in past videos, I'm not happy with the fact that so many Vegapunks are involved, and it feels like we're just adding characters for the sake of adding characters right now. If it is for the purpose of setting up at least a bit of a running mystery and trying to build something a bit more complex to the point that we would feel very satisfied at the end of this arc with the fact that Oda wrote in so many extra, you know, Vegapunk characters, then, you know, I'm all for it. I like the way that this is going. It feels like there's some sort of a justification for having 6 extra Vegapunks right now because we're playing the murder mystery game, right? So I'm excited, and I keep talking in this video as though Shaka, it's just a given that it's going to be Shaka. It might not be Shaka. Maybe it's someone, maybe it's York, we don't know. But ultimately, Shaka seems like the most interesting and the most likely. So let's just say it's him for now. And then if we get surprised with something that, you know, none of us were expecting but makes perfect sense, like 1, 2, 3 chapters down the line, then great. great. It's just icing on the cake for me with Egghead Island. I think I've already gotten pretty much all the excitement I want out of it. I'm just looking at the upcoming fights at this point and the Kuma flashback. So on that note, let's talk quickly about the Kuma flashback. I thought that the Kuma flashback, I feel like this is going to be a big one. I feel like this is going to be a big one. I don't want to get my expectations too high, but I mean, Oda's been teasing this for so long. We even just started at this chapter, and Bonnie's basically saying it's too traumatic for me. I have to take a step back, right? We can't really sink our teeth into this just yet because it's going to be a very, very dramatic, very sad flashback. And I feel like it's been some time in One Piece that since I've read a, tragic character flashback that has really, really made me emotional or really made me, tear up and all that. I feel like this could be a great one. I feel like this could be potentially set up to be one of the better, if not one of the best flashbacks in all of One Piece. Maybe the best post-time skip flashback that we'll have gotten at least in terms of emotion and tragedy, right? I don't know how people weigh Roger laughed and everything like that. There's different values to different flashbacks in terms of what certain ones you go to for versus other ones. I'm saying purely in terms of heart-wrenching, tearjerker moments and stuff. I feel like the Kuma one could be really, really, really great, right? Because it goes to the heart of the story of One Piece, right? The Celestial Dragons. What do the Celestial Dragons do to people? We finally get to see a fully fleshed out story, not just general visions of, Boa Hancock having suffered vaguely at the hands of Celestial Dragons and things like that, and a few montage style panels. It feels like we're really going to get to delve into the suffering of one kid, Kuma, at the hands of these terrible, terrible beings, right? The worst people in the One Piece world and the ones that we're working towards eventually defeating. I don't know. I think that the Celestial Dragon situation, we're gonna learn more about it through Kuma, and we're gonna learn to hate the Celestial Dragons even more through Kuma. And even right now, the panels that we got felt very dramatic to me. We don't have enough context yet for me to really, really feel emotionally moved by them. But I love the juxtaposition we're already getting between Kuma climbing the red line, Kuma today, a man who suffered for so long from the Celestial Dragons, apparently since childhood all the way up till now, where he's been turned into a slave by them, and it seems like it's finally come to a breaking point where he's had enough. He's scaling the red line to do something to them, to make some sort of a stand against them, and at the same time we're getting this flashback to him as a child and where all of his suffering at their hands started. I think it's a really, really great setup. So I'm very excited for this. I feel like this is potentially going to be the highlight of Egghead Island. The question is, when is it going to start? Because Oda's already set up all these other plot threads that are rolling. The mystery plot thread, the search party situation, Zoro and Luffy are watching over Lucci and Kaku. The Marines are on their way. There's a lot happening. The Gorosei member is there. So it's kind of like Oda's pushing and pulling. When's he going to start this flashback? Is it really going to play out before all the fights start? Right before the fights start? I don't know. But he's teasing us quite a bit with this. As for the other side of things, right? What the Strahds are doing, okay. It's interesting to me that I don't know how the whole search party situation is going to play out, but it's interesting to me that Luffy and Zoro of all characters are separated yet again. It's always interesting when those two get paired off, right? Because they are the two strongest fighters in the crew, right? They're the two strongest fighters in the crew. If those two are being separated, it feels like it's for combat reasons. At least I like to think so. I like to think that they're set up for some sort of a fight approaching or something like that, because I don't know. You've got Lucci and Kaku sleeping right there. They are incapacitated. I do like the little back and forth of just, I can't believe that we bumped into these guys again. The most casual way to frame it, as though these guys didn't give you, the fight of your life. Like, think back to Water 7 Enies Lobby, how absolutely traumatic and life or death that entire situation was. The entire crew nearly fell apart. They declared war against the world government. They nearly lost Robin. They nearly lost Usopp. The Buster Call was bearing down on them, right? They barely got out of there with their lives. It was probably one of the most difficult, strenuous situations the Strahds have ever faced. And Luffy and Zoro are just chilling like, can't believe we ran into these guys again, as though it's just the most casual thing in the world. But I like that they're referencing. It takes me back to Water 7 and everything, because I just like, we've been through this story for so long. I like getting references back to, the earlier moments, especially the particularly important arcs in the series, right? And getting reminders that the characters also think about these and these experiences. So I like that. And then finally, we've got the Vivi situation. The Vivi situation, I don't have much to say on it, other than I am so pleasantly surprised to see Wapol back in the mix. I don't know why. He was my second favorite part out of this chapter, behind the start of the Kuma flashback. It's just, I don't know. It's just why is Wapol of all characters included in this situation? He has no business being here whatsoever. I guess Oda just wanted to add a bit of extra comedy to the Vivi and Morgan situation. I think Morgan's is funny enough, but you know, I will gladly take Wapol. It's just funny because he's so out of place. We've moved so far beyond a point where a character like Wapol would be even somewhat relevant to the plot. He is essentially just a completely ignorant bystander to the stakes of everything that is going on with Im, Vegapunk, Luffy, what's happened with King Cobra and everything like that. And then you just have Wapol, right? So I like that little aspect of it, but the bigger deal that is getting me so excited about Egghead Island in general is that it feels like we're getting closer and closer to answers, right? So not just the Kuma situation, what all happened there, but on the other side of things, the bigger question, which is what happened at the Reverie? That's been a question on our minds for so long. What happened at the Reverie? Where Sabo, where Vivi, where all of this stuff went down with King Cobra. We're still up in the air as to Sabo's fate. I do have a video coming out on that this Tuesday. We're still up in the air about Sabo's fate, but now we're getting kind of the other end of things with finding out about Vivi. And it seems like we're circling that reveal of what really went down at the Reverie, what went down at Marijua, because right now we've seen Bonnie, who likely has some inkling of what went on there, might have even been heavily involved. We've got Vivi, who was definitely directly involved in whatever the Reverie incident was. We just saw Sabo about 10 or so, a little more than 10 chapters ago, basically, in the aftermath of the Reverie incident. So we're circling around all these pieces. Kuma was likely there. Kuma doesn't have a brain necessarily, but all of these characters that know, we're getting to see them over and over and over again. So we're about to get to some really, really, really major reveals, which is extremely exciting because we've been waiting on them for so long. The question is simply, in what order are we going to get them? Is it going to be Kuma's flashback first, then getting to cut away to Vivi, maybe to Sabo, etc., maybe Vegapunk explaining some things, maybe Bonnie connecting some pieces? I don't know. Maybe we get to cut away to Im or something like that soon. Maybe a Gorosei member tips us off or something like that through some weird, dark, mysterious dialogue. It's hard to say, but everything is going down at Egghead Island right now. It's just the pieces are being set up and everything's gonna explode sooner or later. So I don't know. I never expected this arc to hit this level of stakes, to bring us close to this many reveals. Let's see how it all plays out. I have no idea how much longer this arc is going to go. I have no idea how the finale of this arc is going to go. We honestly don't even know for sure who the traitor is just yet, so let's all just wait and see. But I've really, really been enjoying this stretch of chapters and definitely looking forward to next week. So I will talk to you all later. And if you enjoyed this video, then definitely like, comment, and subscribe.